Hello and welcome to the podcast called The Good Way with me, Torrin Brown, Pilgrim Officer at Canterbury Cathedral. Today I'm very lucky and delighted to have with me in the studio the Chair of the Trustees for the Pilgrims to Rome, author of 2 books, Walking on Holy Ground, which I know, and From the Crowded Mountain, which I didn't know you had written. It's Nick Dunne, Chair of the Trustees of Pilgrims to Rome. Thank you for coming in, Nick, and welcome to the Good Way podcast.
Thanks for having me, Torrin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. I just wanted to start by a soft introduction maybe for the listeners who don't know much about the Pilgrims to Rome and who may be contemplating pilgrimage from afar. Do you want to give us like a little brief introduction as to what the charity is and what you do, what it's set up for?
Absolutely. Yeah. We're a small charity. We're a small group of volunteers, really. We came together probably 25 years ago, in the days when the Via Francigena route between Canterbury and Rome, we'll talk more about that in a moment or two, when it was in its infancy. And the pioneers who were beginning to walk it began to communicate with each other and to share essential information really about the route and where to stay and those sorts of things. And gradually over time, as the Via Francigena has become better known and the guidebooks have appeared and the maps have been done, we've slowly grown to a community really of about 300 members that supports the work of a small core group of volunteers that I'm a part of, that provides information through the website, runs an annual conference. We have an online shop which provides the all-important credential for people who are planning to walk the Via Francigena, so you can gather your pilgrim stamps as evidence of your pilgrimage. We organise a conference every year in person in London, and occasionally we have online discussions which allows those people who are living outside the UK, and about half our membership come from overseas, particularly United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, a few people in South Africa. So, we're a small charity, but an international one. And I think that as we're the English language speakers, then that's often attracted people to come and get in contact with us to find out more, to get the basic information, but also to share their experiences as well.
Yeah, I have noticed this year an increase in numbers coming through Canterbury who have travelled all the way over from Australia or New Zealand to then begin their journey to Rome. A lot of Americans and people also funnily enough, from Vancouver Island.
Oh, that's right.
Quite a large number. So, yeah, I could sort of testify to that with sort of boots on the ground, being there at Canterbury and seeing these folks come in. And you say you have 300 members of the charity, but do you have any idea of, let's say, what your audience is? It's difficult to tell, I would imagine.
It's very difficult to capture numbers. I mean, we far more people come to our shop and buy a credential than actually decide to join up. That's
a good measure.
So that's an indicator. But when people decide to walk, where exactly they're going to be walking, we're not in a position to sort of gather that information, sadly. But that's where working with yourself here in Canterbury begins to build a picture, because obviously the interest in the Via Francigena almost like evolved out of the interest that in the Camino going to Santiago de Compostela.
Yes.
And I remember being fascinated by that probably in the late 90s and finding it very difficult to find any information. But now it's a hugely popular route, and not far short of 500,000 people qualify for the certificate at the end when they reach Santiago de Compostela. We're nowhere near that number of people, and in many respects that's part of the charm, because the route into Santiago at peak times can get very, very crowded indeed, whereas the route to Rome from Canterbury on the Via Francigena is much less well known and certainly much less travelled in Northern Europe. It gets a bit busier as you get further south from Lucca. but there's still that sense of mystery about the route, which is deserved, and it's part of the fascination, really.
Yes, I feel the Via Francigena is now rising to the surface in public consciousness, and more people are becoming interested in it. And that might be because Compostela is becoming too oversaturated. I've heard it described as a circus in the months of June, July and August. And you wouldn't, and so that's a good measure then. People who buy the passport, everyone's going to want that, obviously, along the way. And I know we sell them at the cathedral, and I have no idea how many we sell, and it's something I'll look into. But if I were to, when people ask me, I'm constantly being asked how many people arrive or walk pilgrimage from Canterbury, regardless of the route. And I probably say that no less than 2,000, but maybe no more than 5,000 per year. But I could be well off. That's just a sort of thumb in the air guess. And next year now we've opened a new pilgrim office at the cathedral where every pilgrim hopefully will come in and register and say hello. I'll get a better angle on that. But off the top of your head, do you know roughly how many passports you sell as a guide, let's say?
Oh, goodness me.
No, I'm not putting you on the spot.
I would say maybe, let's see, maybe 10, 15 a month.
Okay.
So, something like that. That's
an interesting measure.
It is.
It's different. Nobody has. I know there are some people who sit at churches with clickers and try and click, but even that's sporadic, and no one's got a real great idea as they do in Compostela, because I follow the pilgrim, the pilgrim count, I think it's called, on Instagram, and they have a daily, pretty accurate number, I would imagine.
Yeah.
But everyone wants their Compostela at the end of the journey, so everyone's going to go to the office and they'll have those numbers. But
and I think that it's relatively recent. It's about a year ago. In the Vatican in Rome, they opened a new pilgrim welcome office.
Right.
Because I think we finally arrived in Rome in 2022, in April 2022, having started the walk back in 2014 and doing it in stages, just as our time off, annual holidays from work allowed. But people were saying how disappointed they were by the welcome in Rome compared to what the experience of Santiago de Compostela. But they've taken a step change on that, and there's a new office there, which I understand gives a very, very warm welcome. If you can find it, it's buried a little bit in that great complex of Vatican buildings, but the statistics for those arriving and receiving the certificate should begin to come through from that. But obviously that just, you've only got to do the last 100 odd kilometres, so it won't necessarily give a good statistic about who starts from where, but that's slowly evolving.
Yes.
And there is a European association of the Via Francigena which is quite keen to gather that sort of data, we'll see more of that information. But the anecdotal stuff is that the numbers travelling from Canterbury going through northern France are still pretty few and far between. That when you walk that route through northern France, it's perfectly possible not to meet another pilgrim from one day to the next.
Yes.
And indeed that can be part of the charm, because the sense of unpacking a little bit about why is one walking. Is it to find companionship within the pilgrim community? And that's one of the great experiences of walking the pilgrim route, the pilgrim conversations that happen on the way. But equally so, there is that sense of adventure and at times seeking solitude.
Yes.
And that in itself can be a profound aspect of the experience. You read the accounts of people who've done the walk alone and in one go, and you can see that sort of times of peaks of high, peaks of low in terms of isolation, loneliness, engagement, solitude, all of those sorts of things. So it's a rich experience, but I mean, we would encourage, and we do encourage people to explore the whole part of the route, not just go for the jewels in the crown, if you like, at the end in famous Tuscany and with all its beautiful places. But there's many, many beautiful places all the way along the route, and each part of the route has got a tremendous character, including the section between Canterbury and Dover.
Yes.
A lovely route. And we'll talk more about this later on, that the newly recognised, just within the last year, the northern extension of the Via Francigena, which has been formally recognised as Francigena Britannica, which now gives you a route coming out of London, starting at Southwark Cathedral at London Bridge, following the Thames to Dartford, and then in through country paths, drawing up the North Downs Way and coming into Canterbury that way. So an extra week's walking, but something that gives more, gives a greater foothold of Via Francigena in England.
Yes. I've heard about that, and I need to explore it more one day, maybe take a walk.
Yes.
And the France section intrigues me. I had that as a note to ask you about. I haven't walked the Via Francigena. I've walked to Compostela, and I've walked from here to Dover to experience the UK bit. But Sandy Brown described it quite nicely. He called it an oscillation of being alone for so long, and then you hit the dynamic of a town.
Yeah.
And then you almost, I found this when I gave myself 2 days rests in Burgos and Leon.
Oh, yeah.
I suddenly just wanted to be back out on the road because the town was just too dynamic and too busy after being alone for so long.
Yes.
Because I walked off season, I was alone for a long stretch of the way anyway. And they say that it's just this mile after mile of agricultural land in France. Is that? Because I can only, when people ask me questions, I can only go by what other people have told me, because I haven't experienced it. Is that an accurate description of just endless agriculture and then a town, or is it not that binary?
No, I think that is a good description. I mean, I started the walk in 2014, and I was fascinated by the Via Francigena story, and I was equally fascinated by the First World War, and to a lesser extent the Second World War, and the stories that are in northern France there. So I diverted my route off the official Via Francigena from Calais to go north up to the Belgian border and follow the Western Front down.
Ah, okay.
And so I did get a very good sense of that sort of landscape, and I think the first thing that struck me as you get to France is there's so much space compared to England. There is so much space, and there are these vast fields and horizons, and you see on the map there's a village down the road, and you get excited about the prospect of a village down the road, because maybe there'll be somebody, it might be a cafe there. No, there isn't. There is and I don't understand and know enough about France to understand what's going on underneath all of that. But you are looking at large distances and villages where not a lot is happening.
Yes.
And I suppose that's one of the things where you appreciate it when you see a church spire on the horizon in a distant village, and you think, oh, there's a village ahead, and you've been walking for a couple of hours and you're getting, tired, a bit bored perhaps as well, and you think, oh, maybe something's happening there. And you see this church spire in the distance, and you get there, and you hear the clock chiming, so you think, well, it's chiming the hours, so somebody's there, somebody's ringing it, and you get there, and it's all locked up. It's not, it's not a sign of anything. And how flat you feel. And in contrast, you get there and you see the door closed, and you test it, and the door opens. And there's that wonderful sense of welcome you feel, just the fact the door is open and you go in. And of course, churches are like time capsules. And that you go in, and you are then in a different world, and there's stories in there, and there's sights and thoughts to stimulate, and you're refreshed by that little experience. And so really then appreciate, even if you don't see the person who's responsible for looking after the church, you do feel grateful to the community that they managed to keep that church open so that you can do it. And so I always try to put a coin in the box just to say thank you, because how much it costs to keep these churches open. But that sense of spark, you might not see any other human being in that village. They're all either off at work elsewhere or whatever. But if the church door was open, then that was
there's a moment of sanctuary.
Absolutely.
After being alone in the wilderness for so long, suddenly you must feel, although I did when on my brief experiences similar to this on the route to Compostela, yes, that safety net somewhere. Suddenly you're somewhere safe, as opposed to just being out on the middle of nowhere by yourself. So that's wonderful to hear. That's good for them. Sorry, you were carrying.
Well, I was going to say that it took me a while to discover the secret of these ringing clocks.
Okay.
And of course, what they've got is a very clever automated system that not only tells the time but also triggers the bells that go. So, sadly, there wasn't somebody pulling the rope inside every quarter hour, but they still gave a message in what would otherwise be very silent days.
Oh, that's wonderful. To know that still happens, whether there are people there or not. Is a maintenance of a 100-year-old tradition, I guess, that is lovely to see still cherished.
Yes, most certainly.
It's like the light at the top of the tower by the south door in Canterbury Cathedral that still burns through the night.
Oh, yes.
And it was an ancient light for pilgrims who are travelling by night, could at least see the cathedral. But they keep it on to this day, and I think that's a wonderful tradition to keep.
I didn't know about that. I'll look for that. That's fascinating. But I think there is this thing of trying to unpack this, why I was doing it and what the motivation is. And I was thinking about it actually just coming down the train today from London, and I was on the high-speed train, and it was almost going too fast for me to engage with what was going on through the window.
Yeah.
And of course, even more so now because the technology is moving forward so quickly. Our world is a world of machines. It's a world of technology. It's a world of virtual encounter. And one of the things of the attraction of these great pilgrim routes through countryside, through landscapes that are very different to the type of landscape that most of us nowadays live in, whether it's a virtual landscape or the urban or built-up landscape, is that draw to a different environment that carries some secrets, transcends time in some way. And so you say that the place of the church bells ringing in the distance, that's a sound that people would have heard for millennia, but we hardly hear now. And that sense of walking paths that people have been walking for centuries, are there connections there? Time is linear, but in some respects it's also circular as well, and that possibility of walking those pilgrim trails and doing so at a pace and with a mental space that perhaps allows you to hear as well as see things slightly differently to how we see them on a day-to-day basis.
Yes, you live life at 3 miles an hour.
Yes,
and there's no blurring of things around you, and with the flipping of the phones. We've come to the stage now, I find, where sometimes I'm guilty of this myself. I can't read much beyond a few sentences because we're so used to reading things in such small bites and seeing things in such small bites, flipping through news items or news apps. And so to slow down without a screen and have that time, because I relate this to pilgrims in the cathedral when I take them to see the miracle windows, which have translated the stories that Benedict collected into stained glass. So these are real stories documented back in 1171. And there you see images of pilgrims. And I like what you said about that non-linear. It's a circular time loop, the way they thought in those days, because they knew very well what they were constructing at the time wasn't a one-off thing. It had the same meaning for them in the 12th century as it would in the 13th, 14th, on right up to the present day and into the future. And so the ringing of the bells, these pilgrim routes, they are they have a circular nature to them. Just as much meaning you would find walking down them today as people would have done over the millennia, as you say, hundreds of years.
I think, one of the fascinating things I've tried to process the experience by writing about it afterwards, as many people do, I think, in different sorts of ways. I kept a journal, and then using that journal to research afterwards the places and the people and the stories that we were passing through. But one of the memorable experiences was coming towards the end, and I'll be writing about this in the third and final book when I finally get to Rome. But that the route was charted by an Archbishop of Canterbury back in 990 AD, Sigeric, if that's the correct pronunciation, on his way back from Rome. And when we were in Rome, and we went to Santa Maria Maggiore, one of the great churches in Rome. And it was famous for its Byzantine mosaics.
Right.
Which date, I think, from the 4th century, 5th century maybe. And we went into this great basilica of a church where Pope Francis is now buried. And we looked around and saw these bright, brilliant colours all around the place. It looks as fresh as the day was new. And I thought, well, where's these original old mosaics? It took a while to work out where they were, and they were all over the place.
Right.
Up high and on the panels. So we looked at it, and then we realised, well, actually these are exactly the things that Sigeric would have been looking at these in 990 AD.
Wow.
And they would have been ancient then when Sigeric saw them. And so suddenly all of this, almost 2 millennia sort of collapsed into one single moment of experience. And William Blake's famous poem came to mind about this, seeing the world in a grain of sand and eternity in an hour. And you could see what he was getting at with that. But the fact one had walked there, you felt you'd earned it. Could have taken a tour. Could have just jetted out, whatever. But the fact you've walked and earned it gives us a different meaning to seeing those treasures when one gets there. Yeah.
Yes, that's why I think the pilgrim welcome at the destinations is so important. To have a sort of virtual hug from the church, or and because it is going to give it resonance to, as you say, looking at those mosaics, it's going to have a much more deeper meaning, much more significance for you. Having experienced it. And I'd love to talk a little bit more about your books, but before we do that, the Dear Sigeric, is there anything in Rome? There's nothing here. He's an undersung hero, and a lot of pilgrims who come from Italy and France always ask me, where's the Sigeric place? What have you got? Where is he?
Yes.
And there's nothing apart from the roll call of archbishops in the Augustine chapel. And I would love to one day, part of my plan or dream is to get a memorial for him. He's buried down in the crypt somewhere, nobody knows. And it would be nice to have a statue, as they have in Glastonbury Abbey, of him.
Absolutely right.
But is there anything in Rome of Sigeric?
I didn't see anything, no. It's not to say there isn't, but I haven't seen anything at all. And I think it is it is Canterbury that is the place to celebrate him. As you say, he is here somewhere. Though the new Archbishop-elect, Sarah Mullally, has, I understand, has walked part of the Via Francigena herself. She walked in the summer with her husband Eamon,
right,
who wrote an excellent article for our annual magazine for members.
Lovely.
And so, I've asked around a little bit, and as far as I know, Sarah could well be the first Archbishop of Canterbury who's walked the Via Francigena in recent times.
Right.
So she might well have a particular feeling for Cedric. So that might be a time to raise that idea when she's settled in.
Asked to say hello as soon as possible. Maybe I'll invite her in to do a podcast.
That would be nice. And
so, yes, I'm interested in your books. Would you like to just tell us a little bit more about them? There are two in a series of three.
That's the plan. Yes. I walked the Via Francigena slowly, and I've written about it slowly. It's how I sort of process things. But the first section of the walk was in 2014, 2016, and it took me from Canterbury, really from London, because the idea of walking had been around for a long, long time. Ever since I'd read a book back in the 1980s by a Jesuit priest who I was an acquaintance of, Father Jerry Hughes, and he walked to Rome and wrote a book in Search of a Way. Right. And I read that in the late 1970s, and it was an exciting book because it really sort of captured that sense of adventure, and that at that time I was a young man, sort of still going to church, but finding Sunday parish life extremely boring. And you think, is this it? This is parochial with a small p. But there was Father Jerry sort of embarking on this extremely ambitious and exciting adventure of just walking to Rome. He had a job to go to in Rome, and he had time, so he said, I'll go and walk. Wow. So that book sat there, and that was long before the Via Francigena had been charted. So he was following main roads largely, and much too ambitious. But the ideas remained there. And then Cicerone published the first, Alison Raju's guide to the Via Francigena. Came out around about 2013, 2014. And I came across that and I thought, well, okay, we've got a map now. Mm-hmm. And at that time I was also doing paying a number of visits to the Western Front and researching relatives who served in the First World War and some who died as well. And so I'd made visits to the battlefields of Belgium and France. But the idea of the walk, it began to coalesce, that almost like the thread of a necklace around which the stories that I'd been collecting, they needed to be brought together. Right. And so the Via Francigena provided that thread. And so that first section of the walk from Canterbury to Laon allowed me to gather those stories along the Western Front, of family stories as well as historical stories. And I think one of the things that I was beginning to discover, the perspective of those great events from where they'd actually happened, so that I remember that initial experience in Calais. My grandparents had always talked about the war. Mm-hmm. And you had to work out which war they were talking about. Was it the First War or the Second War, before the war, afterwards? But suddenly, you arrive in Calais and you're spending time in the museums there, and you're suddenly realising this is where it happened. This is where the occupation posters were happening. So that was very profound. And so the walk continued in stages for the next few years, and from Laon I continued. Laon is an amazing French town, which I'd never heard of, and is rarely visited. I mean, it's a bit like Rochester in some respects. It's not top of the tourist route, a little bit forgotten, but it's got an astonishing cathedral that is probably one of the finest examples of early Gothic architecture.
Wow, okay.
And so the first book finished in Laon, and the second book begins in Laon, and the title of the book, From the Crowned Mountain.
Yes.
The name of Laon is known as the Montagne Coronée because it's on a volcanic plug. The old town's on this volcanic plug that sits up above the plain. So a mystical place in many respects, even more so because you go to Laon Cathedral, middle of the week, you go in and there's nobody else there.
Right.
It's an incredible building, and you're the only person in it.
Right.
And that's because it's not on the tourist route, and it deserves to be. But the great privilege, if you are a walker, of going there is that you can have this wonderful place to yourself. So many, that was the starting point, and that route, the second book carried on all the way through France, through. I never know how to pronounce this. It's spelt Reims, often pronounced Reims.
Right. Yes, I've never known how to pronounce it, but I hear they say Reims.
Reims, that's it.
To me, it's Reims. But
yeah, absolutely right. Well, that's on the edge of the Champagne district, which is very exotic in its own right.
Yes.
But again, this amazing thing that began to encounter these tombs of the very early figures of European Christianity.
Okay.
And in Reims there is the tomb of Saint Remy, who I realised was slightly before St Augustine here in Canterbury, but he had his role in the Christianisation of what was to become France is similar to Augustine's here in the re-Christianisation of England.
Right.
But the difference is that here, the Reformation, broke up all of those relics and those tombs. There's nothing tangible left apart from a fragment here or there.
Yes.
Here you had, the tomb and the bodies inside.
Right.
And you thought, goodness me, that's a very personal connection across those centuries. So that was one of the wonderful features of Reims, and then walking on through the Champagne countryside.
Yes,
was a wonderful experience, and I remember I'd read in a book written in the 1980s of a fellow who'd walked this way, and he was in the Champagne countryside, and he came to midday, and he was looking for something to eat. And he came across a chip van at the side of a dual carriageway.
Good Lord.
So he went up to the chip van and he said, okay, I'll have some chips, and what have you got to drink? And the fellow looked at him and said, I've got Coca-Cola, water, and champagne. What do you want? And so the fellow said, well, I'll have some champagne, please. And so it's sort of poured into a plastic cup or whatever, and he sat at the roadside eating chips and champagne. And that tremendous image of this superabundance of this magical liqueur would be there. And of course, I spent all day looking for a chip van, didn't find one, but eventually was treated to tremendous hospitality in the place I stayed, where there was a half bottle of champagne on the house, which was quite lovely. But again, that sense of discovering, everybody had heard of champagne and just about afforded it at Christmas time, but just understanding that area about where it's made and how it's made, and actually how small scale champagne production is. There's an intimacy which I didn't expect to discover.
That's a nice way of putting it. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so that next phase took us right through France, Besançon, across the Vosges Mountains and into Switzerland, across the Great St Bernard Pass again, which is, there's a destination in its own right.
Mm-hmm.
And we were very lucky to have good weather to cross the pass, spend a couple of days there before descending into Italy and finishing at Aosta, which is an incredible town.
Right.
The home of St Anselm.
Oh, right, okay.
He was born there.
The beautiful St Anselm.
The beautiful St Anselm, who is very special here in Canterbury. And in fact, the blessing that my wife and I received setting out from Canterbury was given to us in Anselm's chapel.
Right, okay.
Where there's the altar, I think was given by the people of Aosta, of local Italian stone.
Their local stone, the black marble or whatever stone it is. Yes, it's beautiful, yeah.
So you can still, there's a plaque up on the on a house that's on the site of where Anselm was born, and so you've got again this wonderful connection. So the second book took me up to Aosta, and now the one I'm working on now will take us through Italy along the Roman roads to Rome, and a finish in 2022.
Yes,
which was obviously, the journey was interrupted by COVID for 2 years.
Yes.
So that's what's going on really, and it was through writing about it has enabled me to talk about it, to hopefully make or share some of that interest and enthusiasm, particularly back in my home parish and other neighbouring parishes, because there's an interest in these days in these long distance pilgrimages. And we talked earlier on about the Camino to Santiago, 500,000 people going.
Yes.
It caught the imagination. The pilgrim routes capture the spiritual imagination, I think, in ways that perhaps traditional ways of engaging with formal religious structures are not. I mean, formal church attendance is by and large in decline. But you need the two things. There's no use just being a pilgrim on wandering those roads if there's nobody there to open the church door for you. Then that's a miserable experience to have.
Yes.
And equally so, if you're opening the church door and you're getting pilgrims, visitors, strangers coming, there's a connection there, there's an enthusiasm. The wanderer can inspire you in perhaps a more settled existence. And the wanderer needs the settled existence. So hopefully people who go on these great pilgrim routes, whether it's to Santiago de Compostela or Via Francigena or others, when they come back, they look at their own humble parish church in a slightly different way and think, well, maybe I can make a contribution. I can contribute in some way or other, even if I don't necessarily agree with everything or understand everything that's involved. It's still a good thing, and I'll play my part.
Yes. Yes, I think the churches can act as really good signposts for people who are walking pilgrimage without the religious mindset, but looking for something in life, which I frame as meaning in some description, to understand the adversities that come our way, often relentlessly. And so if the church can be, I always say to keep the door ajar, as you've just beautifully described, and that might be a way for somebody to engage further, because the establishment of the church, let's say, or the doctrinal theologies people don't understand and don't really want to bother anymore. They've been caught up the last generation in the Dawkins excuse just to be apathetic about the whole thing, and I think he gave a generation a great excuse to walk away and not be engaged. But despite that, I think he's proven to be an empty box, because people are looking for meaning, and even amongst the more atheist-minded, and so they're engaging in these ancient ways and finding something in the churches that they have camouflaged in them, as Mircea Eliade would say. It's not gone, it's just camouflaged. And so that is a lovely point. Yeah, maybe they do come back and look at their churches in a different light. I've never thought of it that way. That's a nice way to frame it. And so when do you think you're now working on your third, the final because you've completed the journey. It's just
Absolutely.
now capturing it on
processing
on paper.
That's right. And I hope to have it out in time for next Christmas.
Right.
So the first draft is just about completed, and I'm just at the stage now of hopefully before Christmas I can show it to a couple of other people, and you reach that very first stage of somebody else reading it, and you get the get comments coming back which are necessary, and so you work out, well, that's all right. That can find. Well, I need to change that. All the editing process that goes on.
Yes, the brutal editing.
It has to be, but it has to be brutal because
it has to be honest, brutal criticism. Honest criticism,
absolutely,
to
right.
help you shape it into what it needs to be. And I think they're good because people who might be in another part of the world and who are hearing about this pilgrimage thing and hearing about Canterbury and the route to Rome and all these different ideas, and maybe it's sparked their interest. Guidebooks are one thing, but personal experience is another. And in reading, people like you, if you're picking up one of your books and they might read a sentence like the way you've described a few things already in this podcast, which might put a light on inside their minds and
absolutely
move forward.
I mean, before starting on the walk, I lived the walk in my imagination. It's thanks to people like Brian Mooney, who wrote his book A Long Way for a Pizza, and Harry Bucknell, who wrote Like a Tramp, Like a Pilgrim.
Yeah,
I lived the walk in my imagination before embarking, and also they gave me clues about, well, if I'm trying to plan it and manage my time, because you have to plan it on the Via Francigena, you can't just expect to come across a pilgrim hostel when you feel tired.
Yes.
There isn't that infrastructure in place.
Yes.
So you've got to plan it, and so thinking, well, drawing from their experience, where are the places that I might find I'd like to spend time in? Mm-hmm. And there might be people there that I'd be interested in talking to or whatever. And so the memoir brings something much more than the can be covered in however good the guidebook is, which is essentially aiming to get you from A to B and give you all the basic information. So I was very grateful for them, and it was a great privilege that now on our board of trustees, Brian is one of my fellow trustees, and it's just great to meet him and to work with him now, having read his work and in him sat in my imagination for so long as I was reading the book. So hopefully what I've written can add to that. That collection, because there's not that much that's been written about the Via Francigena, because not that many people have walked it compared to, say, the Camino.
Yes.
So
yes. Well, you're adding to a rich library of experience. There's a library of experience which is great, very helpful, because modern roads were built to bypass small towns, and it's those small towns where only walking can take you to, and through the experiences of the churches that you mentioned with those tombs untouched. The Reformation obviously didn't hit them too hard, and they're perfectly preserved historical artifacts, if you want to look at it that way, or shrines of meaning if in another light of the saints, or people who have forged our religion over the millennia. But and even in Reims, Jean Tattinger was the mayor of Reims, he twinned Canterbury and Reims.
Is that right?
He loved Canterbury so much, and I think it's a bit of a dying ember now, but it would be lovely to reignite that relationship between the two cities.
There's a French association for the French, and they each year they produce an excellent accommodation guide to the Via Francigena. It's strongest on accommodation through England, France and Switzerland. They're developing the information they have on Italy, but certainly for that northern part, and they are based in Reims.
Okay, are they? Right. That's interesting.
And we work closely because we translate the book into English and we sell it through our shop. And it's, there are two fundamental tools that anybody who wants to set out on the Via Francigena needs to have. One is the credential, the pilgrim passport, that shows that you're a genuine pilgrim, and you gather the pilgrim stamps as you walk the way in it, and at the end produce that as evidence to get your certificate in Rome. but the other is this accommodation guide published by the FFVF, Fédération Française Via Francigena, who are based in Reims. So it's still a very vibrant community there. So I'm sure that's a connection that could be nurtured.
That's interesting. I didn't know these people existed in Reims because the Twinning Association contacted me a while back asking if I'd go and give a presentation, a talk to them there, because a pilgrim arrived in one of their houses and was talking about me and the work I'm doing at Canterbury. And so they reached out and said, would you like to come and see us one day? And of course, I'd go at the drop of a hat. We just need to put it together and organise it. But it would be, now I know that the AVF have the French base there. That's a even better motivation for me to get over there. So that's it. Well, thanks for letting me know.
No, that's great. They actually had one of the most proactive. They had a welcome table in Reims Cathedral when I got there.
Right.
I think we're looking at sort of 2018, so a few years ago now. But there was a table in the cathedral where you could, and you had a choice of pilgrim stamp because it's on the two routes. He said,
yes,
red was to go to Rome,
right,
but blue was to go to Santiago de Compostela. So they were, at a crossroads there.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So that would, that would be nice. That would feature into maybe a route from. I wonder if people who walked to Compostela from England, yes, they went from the Camino Inglés to Southampton and sailed to Ferrol, but maybe if they sailed from Dover and Sandwich over to Calais, I wonder if they went via Reims then,
right,
on the route down,
or indeed just how the French folk got to Santiago as well, which is. There's so many routes across Europe now because it's such a pilgrim route. But no, I mean that's one of the great things is that there's an energy there and a personal connection, and every time we have conversations, something new crops up, just like we're having today, and that's one of the exciting things because it's still organic. It's grassroots. It's bottom up. It's not. It's not suffering from a heavy hand of the tourism industry.
Yes.
Coming in, which one always has to be wary of because mass tourism can destroy that which it is seeking, and we don't want that to happen to the Via Francigena.
No, well, it may. I read a paper the other day that religious tourism is a new thing, and it's a phrase even used in Australia, so I'm told. It's a big thing now to come over to Europe and engage with religious tourism. So it may, but if that takes 20 or 25 years, then there'll be a wonderful grace period where the Via Francigena grows to a more established than it maybe is already in people's imagination, but then it may become too oversaturated. Who knows? Probably like the Compostela route. Well, the St. James route. That's why everyone's more interested in the Portuguese route, which I've heard recently is becoming like the St. James route. Everyone's doing it, and then maybe the northern route will become the next way to Compostela. So it'll shapeshift, I'm sure. But before then, it might grow to a reasonable level of prominence, which would be a good thing for all of us.
Well, I suppose the thing I've had to remind myself is that I'm sure the derivative of holiday is holy day.
It's holy day, yeah.
Yeah, and the early pilgrimages were in industrial tourism in its own way. I mean, I remember when I did walk the last 100 kilometres from Sarria into Santiago, the guidebook pointed out a field beside the path, which it said in medieval times held the biggest brothel on the entire Camino route. So there's a bit of grounding there as to what the ancient spirituality was like. But,
yes, that was a lot of the Protestant and reformist restrictions on pilgrimage, that people were just going just to have a good time and to get out of their mundane cycle of life, let's say. But I think in the Jubilee year of, I think it was correct me if I'm wrong, 32 or 1435, the Jubilee year, I think 2,500 pilgrims were licensed to leave England to travel to Compostela. And I think there were a handful of ports licensed and ships licensed to carry people. And I've done a breakdown of numbers, and I can safely say that of that year, maybe 250 passed through Dover and Sandwich, but Sandwich was the bigger port at the time.
Yeah.
And so they inevitably would have come through Canterbury, I would imagine. And there's the church to the St. James the Great in, I don't know which village, but it's almost a straight line from Canterbury to Sandwich. And along in one of the villages there, Ash or Staple, I can't remember, is St. James the Great Church. So you can see these wonderful connections to Compostela,
Yes.
which have faded but aren't dead. I think we need to sort of resurrect them, I think.
Most certainly.
Yeah, give me your thoughts for the future then. What are your future plans, or what can we expect from the Confraternity of Pilgrims to Rome coming up over the next few years?
Well, it's going to be an exciting time. That I mentioned earlier on that about a year ago now, I think it was October 2024, the European Association for the Via Francigena, which is the official accredited body for the whole route between Canterbury and Rome, officially recognised the northern extension of the Via Francigena, which we'd been developing for past few years, and this is the Francigena Britannica, and it evolved out of discussions really that so many people come to England, the UK, come into London, but the traditional Pilgrims Way route out of London is a long slog up the Old Kent Road, and it's pretty gruelling urban environment, and really what we've done is we've charted a route out of London from Southwark Cathedral, following the Thames to Greenwich, and cutting inland and picking up green spaces as much as possible as we get out towards Dartford and into the Kent countryside, joining up with the North Downs Way, and through the Kent countryside to Aylesford. Wonderful friars there, medieval buildings, medieval hall that pilgrims would have stayed in back in the 13th century to Canterbury. So we've got this 7-day route that has now been officially approved. So the challenge is to have that waymarked so that people can see, find their way along it. Can do that already because nowadays people working on apps, and we'll be finishing the guidebook for people to download online. So following that route, so it's completing the chart, the way marking of that route, so that people can find their way along it, and promoting it. Already there's growing interest because you can just see, the number of photographs that are going on to the app that we've got, just coming in. It's something that catches people's imagination, and even if people feel that they can't get to Rome, you can say, well, listen, you're in London. You can take your first steps to Rome from London.
That's a nice idea, yeah.
And suddenly that sort of simple little stretch outside your parish church, actually, this is the first steps on the way to Rome, and suddenly that ordinary street takes on a slightly different meaning, as you look at it.
The eternal city is over the hills.
Absolutely
just keep
right.
going.
Just keep going. And so that's a big part of our work. We just learnt that that European Association are planning to have one of their half-yearly conferences where representatives come from all over Europe who are involved in the Via Francigena. Their 6-month conference that's scheduled for May 2027 is going to happen in Canterbury.
27, yes, that's
27,
correct. Yes,
yeah.
I've heard of that, yes.
So we'll obviously be building up towards that. We've got a conference, our own conference, which is a big gathering point in the year, is scheduled for March the 14th, 2026. It's a Saturday. It's held at St George's Roman Catholic Cathedral. Got a wonderful hall there that we use, just close to, it's in South London, close to Waterloo Station, so very central. And that event is always a great event because it brings people together, and that energy that comes from just people being together and sharing that experience. And it can be people who are thinking about the route, people who've walked it recently, people who walked it a long time ago but still have got a love and fascination for it, coming together in the conference and going for a beer afterwards in a local pub. And some of those pilgrim conversations, which I touched on earlier on, that are such an important part of the pilgrim experience, get refreshed at that event. So that's all happening. I mean, all of this is on our website. So if anybody is thinking about walking or cycling to Rome, or even just curious and mildly fascinated, then the first step is to look at our website, which is www.pilgrimstorome.org.uk. That's pilgrimstorome.org.uk. And you find lots of information there. The dates about what's coming up will be on there. The shop is there where you can get pilgrim passports, the accommodation guide. The books I've written are on there. Guidebooks are on there as well. So that's your first port of call.
Yes, okay.
We'd love to do a lot more, but we're just volunteers, and
yes, of course.
A number of people have got day jobs to be doing as well.
Of course,
often our
always down to resources.
Absolutely right. But we would encourage you, listeners, whichever country you're in. This is the amazing thing now, is that you can connect and explore, and the website is the starting point.
Yes. Yes, I often get people asking for advice, and that's the first thing I do is say, check you out on Facebook or get in touch with you on the website, because there's of course a rich and wide community of people there with great experience who not only can help but are willing to help.
Absolutely,
nothing nicer than be able to share your experience and to answer people's questions. We're all that sort of same mindset. So good. Everyone knows where to go on that. And then the just out of interest, the waymarking of the Via Britannica, how does that briefly work? I imagine you have to speak to all sorts of councils to put up things on posts along the way, no?
Yeah, exactly. It's rather a daunting task in terms of permissions. I mean, the advantage of the route is it's already along, most of it is along existing waymarked paths. So even if you don't see a Francigena Britannica symbol, you'll see the sign for the Thames Path or the North Downs Way or Darrant Valley. So that's the great advantage. There are some connecting points that need to be better waymarked. Where we're starting is because trying to work your way through the complexities of statutory bodies is quite difficult. So the way that we're starting is to try and speak to places on the route that have got control over their own, that can take the decision themselves. And so obviously churches are a prime example. Cafes can be another one. Anywhere that is on the route and that would be willing to have a waymark sticker, just a sort of 3 inches in diameter, yellow, with the pilgrim symbol on it and an arrow pointing in the correct direction. That's the starting point for the conversations we're happening. We're hoping that Southwark Cathedral will in London will find a place where that waymark can be displayed, because there's a starting point there, and it's going through their committee process at the moment.
Oh, good.
So a lot of excitement there, but you can't just stick a sticker on a listed building. You've got to think about this. And
yes, and you can't on lampposts and things either. It's got to be on private land or stiles on fields and things.
Well, that's what we're doing, and I suppose we're certainly at our conference. We're going to be putting out an appeal for if anybody listening to this podcast is on the route of the Francigena Britannica between Canterbury and London, as people are between Canterbury and Dover, and that's already a very well established route, and the church is on there, and the bed and breakfasts are on that route in Shepherd's Well and Patrick's Bourne and places. Great great supporters already. Taking that idea along the Francigena Britannica route, we'd love to hear from people who live or work or connected places on there, so that we can have those conversations, because ultimately we're hoping to build up some local volunteers who can just keep an eye on their stretch of the route, making sure everything's okay, keeping us up to date with any developments in terms of places on the way or facilities on the way that people want. Shortage of accommodation. We were talking earlier on about how difficult it can be to find accommodation within a reasonable walking distance in French villages. It's a bit of a challenge here in England, surprisingly enough.
That I'm coming across more often, yes.
Yeah.
I think the Pascal family are the only ones left in Shepherdswell now.
Is that right?
Accommodating pilgrims, yeah.
Right.
It's a real shame.
Yeah, absolutely. And we would love to see that happening, developing that along the Francigena Britannica. The good thing is the fact that that route does pass through Aylesford and the Friars, which is a real gem of a place for pilgrims to visit, and we've got that landmark place. But further along, and as you get closer into London, then fewer obvious options. So at the moment, people are sometimes taking a train to a point and then back and forth.
Yeah.
And when I did something of the route when this began back in many years ago, I was doing day trips out of London to pick up the route. But we'd like to improve on that. So we'll be looking for anybody who's got lives or works on the Francigena Britannica route, and you can see the whole page on our website about the Francigena Britannica. So you can chart it there. We'd love to hear from them.
Yeah, maybe pilgrim discounts if you run a B&B or a pub. You've got rooms upstairs. Just to offer a small discount for pilgrims.
It does, yes.
It'll bring in an extra cohort of tourists passing through if people are walking that route. If that does increase, well, it's all good custom, isn't it?
Absolutely,
for people along the way. So, good.
And I suppose it is that thing of, we talked earlier on, especially as far as churches were concerned, in terms of the giving and receiving process between the pilgrim and the host. And I think that one of the strengths of the pilgrimage story is that opportunity to give and receive, and the benefits that can bring, particularly if that process of exchange is a genuine one. It's not just a commercial one, although the tangible economic benefits that can bring. I mean, if every person who popped into a church dropped a small coin or just a few pence into the collecting box, then that would have a cumulative effect on the very tight budgets that people have got who are looking after those churches. So it's that thing of giving and receiving. And when I was walking, I was very conscious of being vulnerable. And the point about that vulnerability was that I was open. I needed the people around me, but I was also more open to people as well. And I had one or two conversations. I had schoolboy French, but I had one or two conversations with people. One man, elderly man in particular, in a French village, who it was a Sunday, and you were going through these villages, and you could hear the families gathering in their gardens, and everybody was having their Sunday lunch, but there's absolutely nobody on the streets. Right. And you, as a pilgrim, you didn't see anybody. You're walking through. And I stopped at this church, and the church door was closed. Oh God! So I sat there and had my sandwiches. But an old man came, and he came to visit a grave.
Oh, right.
And he started talking to me in, sort of fast French, and I got about 20% of it.
Yes.
But he clearly wanted to talk, and he was talking about his, he lived in a village a couple of kilometres away, and I was wondering why he wasn't in some sort of family crowd. Mm-hmm. And you got the sense that maybe everybody had moved away. His son was away in a city or wherever. So the only person he had to talk to
Right.
Was this foreign idiot who could hardly speak the language, but I was available.
Yes.
Because I wasn't in some family group or tour group or anything like that. I was, I was available, and that struck me as one of the parts, the processes. And so over time, I was trying to work out, why am I doing this walk? Is it an indulgence? Is it a pilgrimage? What makes it a pilgrimage? If you call it a pilgrimage, is it just giving a sanctimonious gloss to really an indulgence for a long distance walk and to get away from the crowds, and particularly when you met refugees, or migrants in Calais who were camped out in Calais at that time, who travelled, making great efforts to get across Europe and leave their countries to come to the country that I was leaving.
Yes.
And I had the privilege to do this for fun. And people were having to do this for necessity and at great personal risk. You thought, well, is this just an indulgence? And so it took me a while to work out some of what was happening on the journey, but in the end I concluded it was a pilgrimage, and I sort of put some words together into felt it was a modern, a prayer that modern pilgrims might be able to relate to, and I had it printed up on a little card, and would give it back to hosts who'd looked after me, or if I came into a church and if there was nobody there, I could leave it on the altar just to show that somebody had passed through and been there and appreciated that it was. So I thought maybe I could read this and your listeners might relate to some of the ideas in it.
Yes, well, let's do that then, and let's use this wonderful prayer then that you've written, and let's conclude with the prayer, shall we? We'll bring the podcast to an end and listen to this reflection. Thank you, Nick.
Great stuff. So this is a modern pilgrim's prayer. Why go on pilgrimage, dear friend, now that doctors, not saints, heal our ills? I walk, I reply, in the footsteps of the saints, to disturb my complacency and open my heart afresh to life's adventure. In the spirit of those holy people, I seek time to give thanks to God and blessings to those whose love has nurtured me. On this journey, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. May I be a worthy guest for those who host me, and generous to the holy places which welcome me. May my journey inspire others on their spiritual path, and my greetings brighten some other person's day. So, when I return to the security of my home, I will remember when the days were long, church doors were closed, and conversation hard to come by. Then may I appreciate more deeply those who are my life's foundations, and pause to greet the strangers passing through our settled lives. I go on the pilgrim road, my friend, to be reminded that we have the grace to heal each other in some small way while the world rushes by. And that was written in March 2016.
Well, beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Well, thank you, Tyrone. It's lovely to speak
a wonderful reflection, and thanks for coming all the way down from London to appear on this little podcast.
My pleasure.
It's been great to talk to you and hear about your experience, and do please, if you're feeling you're curious about pilgrimage or thinking of walking pilgrimage, especially the pilgrimage route to Rome from Canterbury, do reach out to Nick and the confraternity. Actually, it's not a confraternity anymore, is it? You're just pilgrims to Rome.
That's the simplification.
Yes, the simplification. Yes. So find them online and do speak to them and draw on their wonderful experience. So I'd like to say thank you very much and conclude this podcast. I hope you've enjoyed listening to Nick tell us all about the confraternity and the pilgrimage route to Rome and his book and experiences, and we look forward to seeing you all again on the next episode. Until then, buen camino.